2,000 years ago, Asian civilization like the Roman Empire in the west and the Han Dynasty in the east had risen to prominence. In what is now the modern-day Middle East, the Parthian Empire ruled over ancient Persia and the surrounding regions from the primary capital at Ctesiphon. 6,000 years ago, long before Augustus established the Roman Empire, one of the first true urban settlements emerged in the ancient region of Sumer. The achievement of its people laid the foundation for civilization to spread, first throughout the ancient Near East and eventually across the entire world. Starting in the aftermath of the last ice age 10,000 years ago, the human population of Mesopotamia and several other regions gradually began to adopt a more settled way of life. This lifestyle was a significant shift from the earlier ways in which humans had survived, primarily as hunter-gatherers. They began to cultivate, modify plants, and harvest crops in the earliest form of agriculture, and to herd animals. Many people gradually embraced this way of living in small village communities, while others continued the primal hunter-gatherer lifestyle. However, over the millennia following the glacial retreat, agricultural lifestyles became increasingly widespread. In ancient Mesopotamia, the growing surpluses of food generated by the agricultural productions soon led to the blossoming of civilization's first seeds. At this point, it is essential to explore the unique geographical and environmental condition of Mesopotamia and understand how these factors influence the development of civilization there. The name Mesopotamia literally means land between rivers, especially the Tigris, Euphrates. The later of these rivers were called Burnen by the native Sumerians, a word meaning great rushing flood, a phenomenon that defined the relationship between the native people, their gods, and the land. Consequently, many prominent Mesopotamian deities, such as Enlil, the chief god of the pantheon, were associated with wind, air, and storms. The people of Sumer sought to appease these gods to stave off the common, devastating and often inexplicable flash floods that struck the region, made worse by the flat nature of the Tigris Euphrates plain. For instance, in one Sumerian myth, Enlil destroyed all of humanity but a flood simply because they were too noisy, illustrating the arbitrary and often capricious nature of the Mesopotamian gods. Early village settlements in the land between the rivers required most or all of the population to engage in food production. This period, known as the Ubaid period, lasted from around 6,500 to 3,800 BC, during which Eridu became a prominent settlement. However, increasing food surpluses allowed for the maintenance of full-time specialized workers who were not involved in agriculture, such as merchants, weavers, metallurgists, and craftsmen. It's for nothing that the taxation and the retributions of food supplies led to the formation of governments. The identity of the first true city in Mesopotamia is debated, but most historians believe it was the famous urban center of Uruk, whose urban lifestyle was indisputably superior to that of its contemporaries. This city featured massive buildings, a social hierarchy, high officials, and temple-sponsored craft workshops. Uruk developed a stratified society and was initially not ruled by a king in the traditional sense, but by a high priest of the temples. Two such temple complexes existed in Uruk, Iana district and the older Anu district. This proto-king, however, derived from his leading role in the temple, representing the various gods and goddesses of Sumer. Just below the priest-king in the status were the keepers, scribes, priests, administrators, whose rules were crucial for ensuring the community's organization, cohesion. At the bottom of the hierarchy were the producers, such as farmers, fishermen. The very first systems of writing also developed during this period, possibly as a memory aid for recording tributes, taxes, and distributions of surplus food. These early writings were primarily based on simple symbols rather than spoken language. From 3500 BC onward, Uruk's influence over neighboring regions became increasingly evident. The architecture of these organic cities, along with its distinctive and innovative mass-produced pottery and tools, began to appear in settlements across the Near East, from Syria to Iran, including locations like Susa. The people who brought these elements likely integrated into existing towns with established populations, established colonies, and unoccupied lands, or even forcefully overtook other settlements from their dominant positions in Uruk. The later scenarios took place at Tel Hamukar, where native structures were burned and destroyed, followed by the construction of buildings in Uruk style, marking the earliest known instance of organized warfare. This quasi-colonial expansion may have been driven by the need to obtain resources that were scarce in resource-poor Mesopotamia, such as wood, obsidian, stone, or metals, rather than by a conscious effort to build an empire. Evidence of Uruk's far-reaching influence during this period also suggests presence in Egypt, where tombs from the pre-dynastic era began to be built in the Uruk niche and buttress style. However, around 2900 BC, it seemed that Uruk colonies like Habuba, Kabira abruptly disappeared from areas outside southern Mesopotamia. Meanwhile, Uruk itself appears to have been devastated by an unknown event and gradually lost its dominant status. The exact cause of the end of the Uruk period remains uncertain, but it is possible that the colonized people revolted against Uruk, or that a civil war erupted among different factions within the city. In the centuries following Uruk's decline, several Sumerian city-states emerged and expanded, creating a political landscape reminiscent of ancient Greece with its network of city-states. These city-states typically consisted of an urban center and a surrounding hinterland of various villages. Examples include Lagash, Uma, or Nippur, Eridu, Larsa, and Uruk itself, which retained power but not dominance during the centuries from 2900 to around 2315 BC, known as the early dynastic period. The population of Sumer grew significantly, possible due to immigrations from other regions or increasing agricultural productivity. These growth put a strain on the resources of the city-states, leading to territorial expansions and ongoing conflicts over border regions. Military leaders during these small-scale wars were often elected by popular assembly in a form of early democracy, though this soon evolved into a dynasty system. These military leaders are believed to have been the first kings, or Lugals, literally meaning great men. During this period, another powerful institution emerged to rival the temple: the palace, the residence of kings. The legendary Gilgamesh is thought to have been a historical king of Uruk in the early dynastic period, possibly ruling between 2800 and 2500 BC. While the tale may also be rooted in myth, we have documented accounts of one of the many border conflicts over a 150-year span from 2500 to 2350 BC, involving the kings of Lagash, who were prosperous due to their successful agriculture and stratification on a trade route to Susa. A prolonged border dispute arose with their western neighbor, the city of Umma. Given the central role of agriculture in ancient Mesopotamia economies, these two rival city-states clashed over the fertile region of Guadena of the victorious king. In a tomb of Lagash, portrayed himself as a defender of his city's patron deity, Nin-Girsu, while the gods Girsu of Lagash and Shara of Uma were depicted as the true masterminds of the conflict, with the kings of the respective cities serving as their earthly representatives. Interestingly, the original boundary between Uma and Lagash was said to have been established by Enlil of Nippur, the supreme god, highlighting his importance in the Mesopotamian religion. Victory inscriptions from the kings of Lagash during this time reflects their dominance, although by this period, the temple had largely ceded its political authority over the Sumerian city-states to the kings. Its economic and ideological power remained substantial. The temples functioned as a comprehensive institutions, comprising spaces dedicated to the gods accessible only to high priestly officials, courtyards for communal gatherings, storehouses for collecting and distributing food surpluses, archives, and workshops. Another example of the religion ideology influence is that while the king would lead military campaigns and the outcome was credited and determined by the will of the city's god, the concept of city gods merits further exploration. During this era of relative balance among the numerous city-states of Lower Mesopotamia, each political entity was home to one of the Sumerian deities. For instance, Ur was the city of Nana, the god of moon and wisdom, while Uruk housed Inanna, the goddess of war and fertility. Most prominent was the neighboring city of Nippur, situated on the border between Sumer and Akkad to the north. Its patron god was Enlil, considered the supreme deity of the Mesopotamian pantheon. Many kings from the cities like Ur, which were home to lesser gods, often sought recognition from Nippur due to its significant religious stature. The period of intricate diplomatic and military relations among the various Sumerian city-states gradually gave way to increased centralization in their religion by the late 3rd millennium BC. The reason for this shift remained unclear, but it is possible that a ruler of this period of the newly unified Old Kingdom of Egypt, which ruled the entire Nile River valley and constructed the famous pyramids, aimed to emulate Egypt's power and wealth. For a century and a half, Ummah had been overshadowed by its more powerful neighbor Lagash. But this changed with the rise of a dynamic new ruler, Lugal Zagesi, who ascended to the throne in Ummah, driven by a desire for revenge against Lagash. He first conquered the major cities of Ur and Uruk before defeating his rival, sacking Lagash, and looting his temples of their treasure. By 2350 BC, Lugal Zagesi established his territorial kingdom and moved his capital to the prestigious city of Uruk, founding its third dynasty. However, the new kingdom would not last long, as a figure from the north of Sumer would soon rise to create the first true empire in history.